an ever-changing world, Life Changes Network presents a voice of truth and inspiration. This is Life Changes with Filippo, with the unforgettable, ever-insightful conversations that captivate our fascination and insatiability for the inspiring moments of real-life journeys, as we, as one, strive for higher planes of existence and a better understanding of our true selves and the world in which we live, always remembering, life changes. This is radio like you've never felt before, with tonight's guest, renowned radio and TV personality, Shadoe Stevens. And now your host, our MC, the master of change, Filippo Voltaggio.
Yes, this is Filippo, and our guest today is Shadoe Stevens, the consummate radio host. So that's pretty cool for me, being a radio host as well, having listened to him for many, many years. I got to do something I've never done this weekend. And let's see. This is how it all began. I'm going to be singing in Milwaukee next week for 4 to 5 days. So all of you friends and fans out there in Milwaukee and Chicago, I hope you come to Festa Italiana. I'm going to be on the main stage for 4 nights. So since that's happening, I was requested to sing a specific song. A specific song, and one that no one has ever arranged it. And at the Milwaukee Festival, I'm going to have trombones and saxophone and trumpet and piano and bass and drums and all these instruments. And so, in order for all these instruments to play something for this song that I've been requested to sing, they need music. And I said, cool, I'll just get one of my friends to do it. Well, all of my friends that arrange music were busy this weekend. And since I need to have it done and sent to them, and I need to learn how it goes and all, I had to do this myself. I had to arrange music for this band all by myself, something I've never done. I've composed before, I've transposed before, and I've also rewritten music, but I've never started from scratch and arranged for a whole band. So what's interesting about this to me is that I was up for the challenge, and I thought to myself, okay, first, we have a saxophone. What does a saxophone like to do? How high does it go? How low does it go? Where does it sound good? Does it sound good to solo? Can I give them a solo right here? Blah, 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 blah. The trumpet. Well, the trumpet's higher than the saxophone, so it needs to sound like this. It needs to do this. Okay, so I'm trying to put this all in music, and then I forgot the trombone. Oh, the trombone. What do I do with the trombone? It's low and it goes, and it slides, and it's like, shoot, what do I do with the trombone? Where does that sound good? I'd love to give it something fun to do, but it really can't do it because it's so awkward and it's so long, and so let's see. But it really needs, let's see. So I figured out where to put the trombone, and I'm piecing this all together, and I'm playing it out, and I think, wow, this sounds really cool. It really needed that trombone, because the trombone really gives it that bass, and it really fills it out, and I thought, wow, what would I have done without that instrument that I was thinking at first, I wish I could just leave it out, because I don't know what to do with it. And isn't that interesting that our guest today is Shadoe Stevens, because we're going to be talking a lot about his book, The Big Galoot. The Big Galoot is exactly like the trombone. There's a kid in there that people don't know what to do with it because he's long or tall or awkward and this and that. And when, I guess the moral of my story is, when you find what to do with some of these awkward pieces, you'll find that they're actually not awkward at all, and that without them, it wouldn't sound as good or be right. And so right after this, we're going to talk to Shadoe Stevens about his book, The Big Galoot, and find out exactly how the Big Galoot is not only, how do we say it? He's perfect. Right after this.
Clean water is not enough. Reverse osmosis, distilled water, and most bottled waters are devoid of naturally occurring minerals. They are acidic, unstructured, and hard to absorb, and rob minerals from the body. IonWay's ionizers produce a super abundant supply of powerful antioxidants in each glass. Ionized water has a reduced molecular cluster size and a negative charge, hydrating you up to 6 times better. Water from an IonWays ionizer will help you restore your body to its natural pH balance, boosting your vitality. And ionized water more effectively flushes acidic toxins from within your body. Drink the healthiest water available today. IonWays Water Systems, their water changes everything. To learn more about IonWays Water Systems and how you can own one today, visit our website at lifechangeswithfilippo.com and click on our sponsor page. You are listening to Life Changes with Filippo on the BBS Radio Network with your host, Filippo Voltaggio. You can visit us online via Twitter and Facebook and at lifechangeswithfilippo.com. That's Filippo, Filippo.
I am Filippo, and our guest today, as a radio personality, he won the Billboard Personality of the Year award. Actually, after leaving the radio for the worlds of television and film, in 1988, he was offered the position of hosting American Top 40. Casey Kasem left the show, and Shadoe became the new host for the next 6 years. And during that time, it became the most successful and widely syndicated radio show in the world. It was broadcast in 120 countries to an estimated 1 billion listeners every week. His voice became one of the most recognizable voices in the world. You'll hear it in a second, and you'll say, oh yeah, if you don't remember the name. But actually, even before doing that, he made KROQ-FM world famous and actually invented one of the formats that is now used by so many other radio stations throughout the world. Shadoe also began his television career as Steve Allen's announcer sidekick on the national syndicated Steve Allen Show. He appeared on so many other shows, including Hollywood Squares, which for 3 years was a top 5 syndicated show. He, of course, not only made that show his own, he became a regular household name. We are so happy to have Shadoe Stevens on the show.
It is my honor. It is my pleasure. I grovel at your feet.
Oh, my God. What a way to start the show. And did I say funny, too?
Whimsical.
Yeah. And so much more. Actually, your bio, I didn't know where to shorten because it all sounds so great. You appeared on so many TV shows and film and this and that.
Well, it's what happens when you are forced against your will to change.
And life changes whether we like it or not.
Whether we like it or not, and you better learn from it, and you better have a good mood.
Oh, okay, so we're going to talk about The Big Galoot and you as an author, which I hadn't really mentioned as well. But before being an author, what was your first love? Did you say, I'm going to be on radio, or did you say, I'm going to be on TV, but I'll start on radio? What was your first love?
Well, as a child, I had two loves. One was drawing, and the other was radio. I was mystified by radio.
Oh.
And I built a little radio. I used a kit that would allow me to broadcast into another room when I was 10 years old. And then I learned how to soup it up. And I put up a 100-foot antenna from the... it's really funny when you see my house, which is still in Jamestown, North Dakota, and think of this 10-year-old climbing up onto the third floor, lifting up on the railing, and crawling up the arch onto the top of the roof and sliding along the top of the third story and hanging upside down, drilling a hole underneath the windowsill so that I could put an antenna that would stretch 100 feet to the top of a tree in the backyard. My parents,
Did you have
permission?
Sure
they had, no, but I did it and then proudly told them they were horrified. And looking at it now, I would be horrified. It's like he's hanging upside down at the top of a third story to hang an antenna. So I broadcast.
Did it work?
It did work, and I could broadcast for a mile in every direction.
I would have been proud of you.
And then I was discovered by the men on the street. There was a guy who did a show on the street, just talking to people on the street. And I walked along one day, and he asked my name and what I did and what I liked. And, I go to school, and I like art, and I like radio. Radio, really? Mm. Oh, yeah. And I tell him about my radio station, and today it would be called a pirate station, but it was an outlaw station. And he said, well, you should come down and talk to us. So I did, and they put me on the air as the world's youngest disc jockey when I was 11.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
And that I did when I was, and it was Saturday morning playing rock and roll. And and telling about what's going on in the school, and here's Chuck Berry.
Chuck Berry.
Little Richard was my favorite. It's still one of my favorites.
And you got to choose what you played?
I did, yeah, and put it all in order. And I would, just like the big time, there's a guy behind the window, and I was out on a table with a microphone like this, and he would point to me, "You're on," and I would point to him to cue the record and go to the commercial. And
at 11 years old,
yeah, and I did that for a couple of years. Then I worked, at the radio station during high school, and then through 5 years of college.
How did TV come along with Steve Allen?
Well, that came along. I went to the University of North Dakota in Fargo, Grand Forks. Then I went to the University of Arizona in Tucson, and after 2 years there, majoring in art and drama, I went to Boston. And when I was in Boston, I was offered a chance to be the youth correspondent on Dave Garroway's Tempo Boston. Now, Dave Garroway was another legend who had been the original Morning Today show and started it on.
Oh, so this was TV?
On TV,
oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And I would come on and talk about Paul is dead and and stuff going on in the youth culture. And on the success of that, they gave me my own television show called Gazebo. And it was a kind of a dance show with rock and roll and guests and so on.
Wow.
And then when I came and the producer of that show, of the Dave Garroway show, was a guy named Rick Rosner.
Wait, so Dick Clark stole your show?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
No question. Yeah, hardly. So I get to L.A. and I go to a radio station here in L.A., which was a legendary radio station called KHJ. And Rick Rosner, now from Dave Garroway in Boston, was now in L.A., and he was producing the Steve Allen show. Oh. And he said, "You'd be perfect. You should be the announcer. We have a young announcer, and it would be a real great sidekick." So now all of a sudden I'm on national television doing the sidekick to the Steve Allen show, who was an idol of mine. I was like, oh my God. Mm. So you remember in broadcast news, Albert Brooks sweating, like running off his, you remember that? That was me. That was true. I mean, absolutely like that. It ran down my face. My shirt was soaked, and the makeup girl would come up in the commercial and go, "Boy, you really sweat." Because I was out of my mind. Are you kidding? I don't know what the hell I'm doing there. I know how to say, "Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Allen." And that's about all. He asked me one time in front of the audience, do you play guitar or anything? I went, I play piano, but not very well. Well, what do you do? I go, well, I walked backward in time. He goes, really? Can you give us a demonstration? Well, sure. So I stood back from Steve Allen and I walked toward him and said, "Hi, Steve, I'm Shadoe Stevens." And then I walked backwards going, yes, yeah, both, yes, yeah, a minute. And the audience was quiet.
Oh, no.
I went, that's it.
On national television.
On national television. It's hilarious. We had a psychic on, Peter, what was his name? A real famous psychic. And I was really honest. And he said, he asked people, does anybody have something given to them by a family member, their parents or something? Well, I have my watch given to me by my dad. And he said, well, give it to me. So I give him the watch, and he holds it up to his head, and he goes, "There's been some sickness in your family. Your mother, I think it's your," I went, no, I'm sorry. And I'm beaming at him because I believe in all this stuff. I believe in the power of the mind and connecting. And I want him to be right so badly, but he was never right. Everything he said was terrible. It was so off, and he kept scrambling, and everybody was uneasy, and Steve Allen was shifting uneasily, and the audience was going murmur, murmur. And they go, yeah, well, maybe we should. Does anybody else have, something? And they gave it, somebody else gave him something, and of course he was right on everything. Miraculously, it was perfect. So after the show, he hated me.
No.
He hated me, and he told, and I had been friends with all of the ballet guys. So the guys that came to me afterward, they said, yeah, when we were taking him out to his car, he goes, "Oh, that son of a bitch. That kid, I should have told him about the affair that he's having on his wife." Wrong! Wrong again. he didn't have a clue. So that was my Steve Allen.
So all those awkward moments, you probably learned how to not give a shit, and then you were able to do Fred Rated, and it's like, what the heck?
No. There were a lot of steps between that. Television lasted a little while. I was signed to do this new show called The Midnight Special, and I was going to be their host, on-camera host. And I got the contract, and I proudly pranced into the radio station manager, and I said, "Great news. I'm going to do a national television show on NBC called The Midnight Special." And he goes, "You didn't talk to me about that. Well, you've got to decide who, butters the bread here. Is it radio or is it television? Do you want to be in radio or are you going to be in television?" And I had to turn it down the night before they were shooting the first show. And they scrambled and got Wolfman Jack overnight to be the guy. Wow. And then he ended up doing it for the next, 8 years. Wow. So I was like ground out of television there. And then I went from...
You could have burnt some bridges too.
And what really was funny is, and this is like all part of that having forced into change, I was a very successful radio program director with this first radio station I did in LA called KRLA. It was the first album-oriented rock station in the country, and it was wildly successful. And as soon as it was successful, they wanted to make changes. They were ordering, do this, do that, and we want you to do that. And I knew that they would destroy it. So I drew them a vision I had. And it was, and I could show it to you sometime. It's this guy with all these wrinkles and wings. And it says, "I had a vision. And the vision spoke unto me, saying, 'Quit, my child, there's no hope.'" And so this is my resignation. So I quit. And I'm happy to go just be a disc jockey. I was a top-rated disc jockey. And I went back to art center school to study art. And so I'm a happy guy. One day, I'm called into the new program director's office, and he says, "I'm going to have to let you..." That same station. He says, "I'm going to have to let you go." And I laughed. I went, "Yeah, that's great. Nobody worked harder. I came in early. I prepared. I had ratings." And he goes, "I'm serious." And I go, "You got to be kidding." He goes, "Well," I said, "Why?" And he said, "You're always walking around here smiling. I know you're cynical about what I'm doing."
Wow.
Went, "Are you out of your mind? I'm the only person happy here. Wow. I'm trying to bring everybody else up, and are you insane?" So we talked for 2 hours, and at the end he says, "I am going to have to stick with my original decision." So I'm fired. Now I go in the next day to get my severance check, and the accountant looks at me, glares at me, and he said, "I hope you go out and spend all this money in the next 2 weeks, and 2 weeks from now you don't know where your next penny's coming from, and maybe then you'll come to the meaning of life." Wow. And I said, "What's the meaning of life, Don?" He went, "Management is God." I went, "Oh, I feel sorry for you." He goes, "It's true." And he thumped his finger on the desk. "They put the food in your mouth and the roof over your head. Management is God." I said, "I think I have to go now." So now the irony of this is that I went home terrified. I'm out of a job. And 2 weeks later, they hired me back for more money.
The same station.
Yeah. And then KROQ came along and offered me this job to go there. And that's another whole saga we could spend an hour telling about. It has to do with Sicilians and...
Sicilians? Careful.
Yes. Sicilians and fast-talking people with, connections and
right,
high drama.
Yeah. But hold on, before we get into any more, so did you go back and pretend life was shit and be angry all the time, or did you still stay happy?
Well, I've always been a glasses half full person. I've always believed, that the best is yet to come. It was drilled into me as a child, but you begin to have doubts along the way when something really bad happens to you. And then, sometimes no matter how hard you try, you can't make it better. It doesn't seem like it's getting better, but you can't see the bigger picture. And the only solution is to go, what else can I do? What else can I do? You know, trust God and take action. What else can I do? And busy yourself learning something, trying something, making phone calls, making connections, talking to people, writing, meditating, all of the things that you learn how to do with over a period of time to keep from just going insane. You know, what's the alternative? The alternative is to get small. You know, you listen to that first negative thought and pretty soon it starts making a list. And the list talks about all the other failures you've had. And it tries to tell you a really scary story about what's going to happen. It's been my experience that no matter how difficult it has been ever, and the worst possible things happening, it was always 1,000 times worse in my mind before it happened. And then when I finally had it happen, it was, oh, that's it? Well, I'm still going. I'm still standing. I'm still upright. There's still possibilities.
And then you went and had, after much work, of course, hard work, you went and had another success. And then
it's like one success followed by a dramatic failure after another. And KROQ was another success and then crash. And then it was KMET and there was a huge success and then a crash. And then I'm out of radio completely and I had to start a production company because I didn't know what else to do.
Wow.
And that is where I started doing radio commercials and radio shows out of my own studio. And I traded work for equipment until I could build up a studio.
Wow.
And then as I built, I got more and more equipment and did better and better work. And then pretty soon I was doing radio commercials all over the place. And then my radio commercials over a period of years led to being in a place where I was there to talk to him about a radio campaign. And he said he was making fun of the television commercials they had. The worst commercials in the history of the world. He told this producer in my presence in the conference room over and over again. As he played them on the big screen, he would stop and say, I can't tell you how much I hate this commercial. It's sexist. It's embarrassing. It's humiliating. I wish I could get it off the air right now. Finally, he said after 2 hours, don't you understand? I want something simple and funny that makes people remember the name Federated. And I said, how about this? How about if I do a fast-talking bass-o-matic pitchman like Dan Aykroyd on Saturday Night Live? And it'll be a parody of a pitchman, fast-talking, loud, and in the end he'll say, and Federated smashes prices, and I'll smash a television with a circus hammer, a giant hammer. He goes, that might work. I said, well, if it works, will you give me creative control? I never want to do the same thing twice because people want to kill me. And he says, okay, fair enough. And so he did it, and business went up 500% the first weekend.
500%.
And now I was off into my television career.
Oh, well, those commercials are classic. I mean, it's just like people watch them just to watch, you know, like, it's like you string them all together and that's a show.
It's pretty funny. Some of them are pretty funny. Some of them stand up great.
And
today.
that came out of your imagination.
Yeah. It was, as I was driving home, I thought the name of the company is Federated. What could I do with that? I got to get people to remember the name Federated. I'll call myself Fred Rated for Federated. Nice alliteration. Fred Rated for Federated. My dog Fear. Fred Rated for Federated with the girl will be Frida Rated. Fred and Frida Rated for Federated with my dog Fear. And Federated smashes prices, and you know, and everything was like flowing them out. How can I say it fast, and how can I make it funny?
I can honestly say that there was my cousin was watching a show one time and screamed out at me because she knew I loved the commercials. She called me for the commercial, as opposed to the other way around when you walk away because there's a commercial. She called me because Fred Rated's on. And I ran in to watch the commercial.
Well, the thing about that was that really made it work is that because it was so successful, they gave me a budget, and I was on retainer to be the guy, and so I had enough money to run my little studio and pay my crew and buy my own equipment, and we turned out 5, 6, 7 a week.
Wow.
For 6 years.
Wow.
We did 1,100 different commercials. No commercial ever ran longer than 10 days.
Wow.
So it was the new episode of Fred Rated every week, you know, and some were really funny and some were just okay. But we did not stop in everything. Fred's Stereo Farm. We grow them fast. You got to dig dig fast because they try to swim away. We're, raising VCRs. And they've got to dig them out of the ground. I mean, really great. Rabid frog bonanza days. Rabid frogs ate our warehouse, and we're passing the savings along to you. I mean, it's really stupid.
But we love them.
Yeah,
and people bought them, and they bought things. So that's fun. And speaking of commercial, it's time for us to break to a commercial. But if you want to learn more about our guest Shadoe Stevens, you can go to shadoe.com, and Shadoe is spelled S-H-O-D.
S-H-A.
I'm getting there. It's S-H-A, in case you heard otherwise.
Yeah.
S-H-A-D-O. Yeah. I was walking backwards in time. S-H-A-D-O-E.com. Did I get that part right?
Yeah.
Okay,
good.
Shadoe.com.
And they can go to mentalradio.net.
They can.
That's fun.
Mentalradio.net, and that's very fun, actually. And a little later, I'll give another website where they can learn and get the book, The Big Galoot. Actually, you can get it at shadoe.com. SHADOE.com right after this. Ciao.
There are self-help seminars costing thousands of dollars guaranteeing miraculous transformations. There are compelling speakers and life-changing weekend experiences where you can walk on fire. They all deliver revelations that guarantee you'll come back for the more expensive revelations filled with even greater wonder next month on Fiji. We get addicted to positive, heartfelt, expensive theater. What we really need is a jumpstart, an awakening, someone who can give us a reminder that everything we need lies within. Through inspiration and practical knowledge, Dorothy Donahue helps people get grounded and motivated, inspired and energized. It's not just words and affirmations and the power of intention. It's a mindset brought about by a tangible, transcendental experience, an audio-visual, physical, spiritual experience that helps us realize we transform ourselves. We get tools to become the conscious co-creators of lives of unlimited potential. Find out more. Go to DorothyDonahue.com.
You are listening to Life Changes with Filippo on the BBS Radio Network with our host, Filippo Voltaggio. You can hear tonight's show and all our past shows, which include luminaries such as David Wilcock, Mariel Hemingway, Giorgio Tsoukalos, Marcy Shimoff, and Shadoe Stevens on our archive page at our website at lifechangeswithfilippo.com. That's Filippo, Filippo.com. Remember, you can also connect with us via Twitter and Facebook, and now in our own community at lifechangesnetwork.com, where real people come together to share real life in real time. That's lifechangesnetwork.com.
I'm Filippo, and our guest today is Shadoe Stevens. There's so much we can say about Shadoe. His bio runs so deep, so long, so interesting. You want to owe it to yourself, if you like what you're hearing, to go to shadoe.com and learn more about him. He's just a fascinating guy. Today we were going to have him to just talk about the book, but he's just so interesting and so fun that we get into conversations and have a great time. And so far we've heard all kinds of fun stories leading up to creating the book. Actually, it's just author, TV, film, radio, art, and it's all him. It's all Shadoe. How he does it, he's the only one that knows. He's brilliant. He's not the only one that knows he's brilliant. He's brilliant, and he's the only one that knows how he does it. So we're glad that he's with us today. And so let's talk about The Big Galoot. Why write a book?
It wasn't my choice. I didn't wake up going, well, I think I'll write a book now. 20 years ago, I woke up one morning. I was at the top of a really colorful career. I'd gone from doing Federated to doing doing a movie and then doing Hollywood Squares and having it become a big, huge hit, and then getting American Top 40 and being flown all over the world to promote it and being in Tokyo and Hong Kong and Oslo and Paris, and it was.
And you had your own show for a while too, Dave's World.
And Dave's World came shortly thereafter. But at this particular moment in time, I woke up one morning saying, "Button-sided hooey."
What?
I heard myself say button-sided hooey. And I went, that's the weirdest thing that's ever come out of my mouth. What the hell? Button-sided hooey. It's a funny play of words. And I wrote it down. And I kept looking at it on the page and thought, what the hell does that mean? Is it came out of a dream or what? And I tried to remember what I'd been dreaming, and I couldn't. But the more I looked at it, the more it looked like Dr. Seuss to me. Button-sided hooey. Well, I like writing verse, so maybe I should write that. My children were real young, and I thought I'll write it for them. And I started writing the Button-sided hooey. And it's an Alice in Wonderland adventure in another dimension where a little girl goes on a quest to free everyone from fear in the land of Wahoo.
Oh.
And it begins something like Alice in Wonderland, but it's all written in verse like Dr. Seuss. It's she ends up going through this little door and falls into the sky and falls down onto what looks like an island. And she's greeted by a creature who says, I've been waiting and waiting. You know it's a crime to keep dabblers waiting. We haven't the time. There are thoughts to be thunk and things to be done. I do this, I do that. We are quite on the run. And he wonders, why is she taking so much time getting there? She's got things to do. She has to free everyone from fear in the land of Wahoo.
Wow.
And he gives her two companions, a whiffet and a whim. The whiffet can sniff it if you don't know where you're going, and a whim doesn't do really anything, but he has ideas. And so she sets off on this quest.
Has ideas. I like it.
And all of the creatures in the book, like Alice in Wonderland, but they're all made out of real words. There's the sniveling squirt who guards the bottom line. There's gluttons and guzzlers and snivellers, and there's, a Fran Fickle in Fickleburg. And there, all of she has to get past all of these beings to find her way to find the great hooey. So somewhere between Alice in Wonderland and the Wizard of Oz is this land of Wahoo, which is basically shaped like your spine. And you have to get from the bottom of the spine to the top of the spine.
Wow.
And that is where the hooey lives. And
in the brain.
Yeah, but it's all very symbolic, and you don't really see that, except in the artwork. You start to notice that that's what the shape is like an hourglass kind of thing. And this became an epic. It's a very long book. It ends with her waking up, and the next book opens with her in the same bed as the bed is growing through the ceiling and into the sky. And she finally says, stop. And she's way up in the sky where the clouds are on the top of this bed, and there's no way off. Meanwhile, her little sister goes outside looking for her because she has no idea where she's gone. And she ends up going on her own adventure in another kingdom where she has to solve a problem and change things for everyone. And at the end of that book, she goes cloud hopping. She hops from one cloud to another. And as she's hopping across the sky, what does she see but a bed in the sky? And she hops over onto the bed and lands on the bed, and the bed falls from the sky, and they roll out on the floor. And Mom says, are you two still up? And book 3 ends up with the two of them waking up and finding they're not really at home at all. And together they have to go find the hooey. And so this book is like an hour and a half to read out loud. And I knew that it would never get published. It's a chapter book written in verse. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So what I did is I set out to write a simple little engine that could book that would, pave the way so that I could release the button-sided hooey. And so I write the Big Galoot, and it's charming, and it's about bullying and believing in yourself and never giving up. And I finish the book, and I find fairly quickly a publisher. And the publisher is really enthused about it, and we get the artist, and I did sketches for all of the pages and what the characters would look like, and then he did all the art and final work, and he did a brilliant job. And so it's ready to go to print. I told you this story earlier, but it's ready to go to print. And the day that it was to be sent to the printer, there was a hostile overthrow of the corporation. They fired the president and CEO. They canceled the children's division, and it took 10 years for me to get my book back. But the story didn't end there. My family gathered together money because they believed in this book. And we started our own little company called Optimistical, and printed it in China. Sent a guy to China to oversee the things, so it would be beautiful books. Got all the books back, 5,000 small books and 1,000 limited edition large scale books, and couldn't find a distributor. And I tried everything, pulled every trick I could, and it never did find momentum. So a number of years have gone by, and now finally I'm able to, because of times changed, put it out on Kindle, and then it'll be coming out on iPad in a couple of months.
Yeah, actually, thank you for showing me the preview of that. I saw things on your iPad with that book that I haven't seen before, so that's kind of exciting. So yes, it is out on Kindle. Actually, you can get the hardback, and then you can get the limited edition if you go to Shadoe.com. But if you go to Amazon.com right now, you can get the Kindle edition for only $3.98. That's a great deal. Does that have all the graphics too, like some of the stuff that I saw on the iPad?
It's exactly like the iPad book, except that the iPad book will have the option of hearing it with me narrating it. And then I did radio theater sound design on all of the pages. So for people that don't know anything about it, the story is about Middleburg School, where all the kids get along. They have the same smile. They have the same shine shoes. And one day, a kid comes to school who has size 42 hands, the biggest hands anybody's ever seen. And he has a pointed head and pigeon-toed feet. And the kids laugh at him. And then the laughter turns to ridicule, and then they trip him and shame him and, throw pies in his face. And through it all, he says, I'm a galoot, but I have good luck. You can't get me down. I never give up. And then they go on a field trip into the mountains, and they're up thousands of feet in the air, and a storm breaks out, and the kids are running for their lives, terrified. And the big galoot keeps saying, but I have good luck. You can't get me down. I never give up. And he keeps trying to save them. He throws a big hand from over a ledge and grabs on and holds on to them while they're, whipped away in the wind off over the cliff, and he reels them in. And they almost make it, and he's swept off the cliff down into a roaring stream, and they turn on him again. We thought you were the big hero. You're going to save us. And he swims upstream to try and save them.
Let's not give it away. Let's not give it away, actually, because it's got a feel-good ending, and it's great for kids, but it's also great for adults. I had a lump in my throat when I got to the end of it, and very clever ending on how it ends.
No, thank you.
So I'm not going to give the surprise ending away. I loved that. So we have about 2 minutes left, and I was hoping that, by the way, if you want, like Shadoe said, you can hear him read it in the new iPad version.
But that won't be
out in a few months. So will that also be available through Amazon?
No, that'll be available through the Apple Store.
Okay, so Apple, is that iTunes?
Yeah.
Okay, so iTunes, in order to get that when that comes out. So in the minute and a half that we have left, could we hear a page of you reading it? That's
okay. Well, I'll read you my favorite part, my favorite lines I ever wrote, maybe for anything. And it's as the storm is broken out and the kids are running for their lives. It reads, a size 42 hand grabbed the yak and held tight, and 22 kids, like the tail of a kite, flew through the air, whipping round in the wind. They flopped and they snapped, they'd jerk and they'd spin, and Warren Galoot poked pigeon-toed feet deep into the mud and would not be beat by forces too fierce for man, woman, or beast. As the going got tougher, his courage increased, saying, I'm a galoot, and I have good luck. You can't get me down. I never give up. He pulled up and saved first the yak, then the teacher. The kids holding on to the foot of the creature were tugged and reeled in, each one at a time, but then started slipping in rain and the slime, and skidded and slid with grunts and a hiss right off the edge into the abyss. Shocking.
Shocking, dramatic, and very well read.
Thank you.
On top of very well written and very well illustrated, actually. The illustrations are just great, the colors and all that. Actually, share real quickly, if you will, before we close here, the story of the little girl who said that changed your life.
Well, I gave a bunch of the limited edition to a bunch of celebrities at the Academy Awards party a couple of years ago. And last year, I guess, or was it last year, several of them came up to me and sought me out in the crowd and said, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you. I've been wanting to say to you for a year, thank you for writing that book." My daughter said to me just like a month ago, said, "Dad, the Big Galoot changed my life." I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, at school, there's this kid who's a little bit slow and kind of funny looking, and kids make fun of him. And I knew because of the Big Galoot, you know, what it felt like. And so I try to be nice to him and try to get other kids to stop because, you know, I know that it's not right." And he said, he said, it's such a valuable lesson for children to hear. And I just wanted to thank you. And interestingly enough, there were 3 different people who came up to me that same night and said different versions of the same kind of a story. It was really nice.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, you know what? This just wasn't enough time, and I'd love to know about your other projects and everything else that you're working on. But in the meantime, we at least got to talk about the Big Galoot, which we didn't get to talk about last time. So
yeah, great.
It's now out on Kindle, and you can get that through Amazon.com. And to learn more about Shadoe and his other projects, you can go to shadoe.com, SHADOE.com, or you can go to mentalradio.net.
The children's book, the easier website for Optimistical, which is Optimistical spelled with an MYST. So you can go to buygoodbook.com.
Oh.
I want to make it real simple. Buygoodbook.com.
I didn't know that one.
And that takes you to Optimistical.
Is that buygoodbook.com?
Buygoodbook.com.
And you heard it from Shadoe Stevens himself. This has been a real pleasure, Shadoe. Thank you so much for being with us.
Always great seeing you.
To do it again soon.
Thank you.
All right. Well, after this, we'll come back with our producer's wrap and Mark Lejour. Right after this.
Life Changes with Filippo is a premier radio show presented by Life Changes Network, which is a company whose team has dedicated their lives not only to positive change, but to helping others observe and embrace, honor, and even celebrate their own changes, thus enabling a more positive, inspired life and helping to create a more positive and inspired world. From everyday people to corporate giants, celebrities, and children, we are here to help and to serve. With heart and experience, we bring our message and positive intent into your home or corporate office, and even through appearances on your favorite shows. If you wish to learn more about Life Changes life coaching and a private consultation with one of us, corporate event appearances, or if you would like us to appear on your radio or TV shows, visit lifechangeswithfilippo.com and click on our representation page. You are listening to Life Changes with Filippo on the BBS Radio Network with your host, Filippo Voltaggio. You can visit us online via Twitter and Facebook and at lifechangeswithfilippo.com. That's Filippo, Filippo.
And this is our producer's wrap after a great interview with Shadoe Stevens. We have Mark Lejour with us.
You know, we could have a whole series of shows with Shadoe.
Sold.
When I was first introduced to him, it was just immediately evident that, of course, the body of work that he has amassed and his creative genius, you know, goes before him. But it's endless. When you open up a conversation with him, you never know where it's going to go. It just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. Then you just continue to dig through dimensions and layers and lots of fun and lots of inspiration.
I love it. I fortunately have gotten to see Shadoe many times throughout the year. He's had a couple events where he showcases other of his amazing talents, which we haven't talked about. Like he took the music of ELO and put it to the Thief. Like the black and white film. This thing is like 15 hours long. Okay, maybe it's like 3, but it's like, and then it's just like, and he takes this movie which nobody would watch anymore. It's black and white and whatever, and he makes it fun, and the words sync up with what's going on, and it's like, where does he even find the time?
Well, you just hit on something that is, I think, paramount to who he is and how he creates, is that he makes things fun. And there's so much of that. In fact, what he was addressing with his, the 2-week hiatus he took from that job.
Mandatory hiatus.
And what he was trying to do every day for the people around him was make that fun.
Yeah.
And I think there's an essence to that part of his personality that is weaved into the story of The Big Galoot.
Oh, interesting.
Making life fun for everybody and seeing the goodness in each. And, that story, I have 2 older brothers, which are both half my size. And somewhere around 13, 14, they used to start calling me the Big Galoot.
Oh, funny.
So I always resonated with the, with the title when I heard that. But there's a Big Galoot in everyone. And, I was thinking what was coming to mind while I was listening to that story and thinking of some of my own upbringing. And we're programmed by the entertainment that is given to us as kids. And so much of it is slapstick and a little bit violent or harassing or poking fun. And that's where the kids learn how to poke fun. They go to the classroom and to the playground and they poke more fun, and it just becomes this thing. And so therefore then the easiest places to go to poke fun are the people that are a little bit outside of the box, a little bit different, a little bit not normal. And rather than seeing them as even more special, I don't want to put, up or down or better or worse, but even, to seeing the magic in those individuals, and then, and as you were saying, to see the trombone in that personality.
Yeah. Find the music, find where they fit in. Cause like Shadoe is definitely outside the box. And yet it's like, I can't imagine, what Hollywood Squares would have been like, when Shadoe came on. That's what we watched at dinner time.
He would have been in the circle.
Yeah. Hollywood Circles. Boom. But no, he just takes everything and makes it his own. And talk about making things happy. I remember actually we get our hair cut at the same place. I should probably give a shout out to Marlene, who cuts my hair at Tina Cassidy, and Tina Cassidy, who does his at Tina Cassidy Salon in Beverly Hills. And so one day I walked in and the whole place was just beaming, and, oh, you just missed Shadoe Stevens was here. And I'm like, oh yeah, really? And they're like, the Shadoe Stevens. Like, I know Shadoe. It's like, he was just here. I know Shadoe. And like, but you just missed him. And I felt sad that I missed him too, because I would have loved to see him. But they were just like beaming because Shadoe Stevens was just here. Well, evidently he goes in there every month or whatever it is, and, but they're still happy when he's there.
See? Making things fun for everybody around him.
Exactly.
Part and parcel of who he is, and that obviously, when you reach 1 billion listeners around the world for years, I guess you get a bit of that celebrity status as well. But anybody that's been around Shadoe in his everyday self feels that energy, feels that magic, and it's very hard to be around him and not have a smile from within. It's infectious.
I like that. So many times I hear his voice on many commercials, but then I hear something that doesn't quite sound like him. So I'll either send him an email or I'll ask Dorothy, who's good friends with Shadoe, and I say, ask Shadoe if he did this commercial. And then he'll write back and say, no, he didn't do that. And it's like, wow, there are people out there that are copying his voice. They copy everything. Obviously, they copied the format for alternative music that he did, and for rock, or rather, and so it's like people are copying him.
Well, isn't that what they say to become an expert? You'll model the expert.
Yeah.
And obviously, he's a luminary and defined success in various categories, but certainly in radio is one of the better known for him. And then what he did with television, and why, if you're going to model, a premium or a top-notch CEO in the boardroom, you got to model after, somebody like Shadoe Stevens on the air.
Yeah. So now, obviously, by listening to his stories, that some of which we heard on the show today, you see that besides him having the talent, he also learned by some hard knocks, and then he's got spirituality, and I know that he meditates. So all of these things come together, and it's not just, it doesn't happen just overnight.
Well, it's a testament to what this show is about. Because a lot of those stories he probably hasn't had the opportunity to talk about, or maybe hasn't looked back at them in a while, or it's not as paramount for other discussions when you're creating new projects. But the reality is that's the body of his life. That's his body of work, and how much creativity has come out of those endeavors. How many new inspirations, and who has he touched, and all those, the nuance of each of those experiences make up who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Life Changes. It's what we're about. It's what we pay attention to. They say sometimes that the magic or the knowledge is in the moment between the words. And so I think that's a little bit of what we're about is the people may know certain people in certain categories or for having done something, and yet most of the magic of their experience in life may have come before or after that.
Yeah, actually, I alluded to that during the show, as you may recall, when I said something like, like when he did that bomb joke on Stephen Allen and nobody laughed when he was walking backwards. Of course, it didn't work for him, but I went and tried it anyways when I misspelled his name, and it didn't work for me either. But so it just doesn't work. Let's not ever anybody do that. You get some of that stuff behind you, and if you could do that on national television, you could almost do anything. And sometimes when you let go of the what are people going to do, or they're not going to laugh, or they are going to laugh when you don't want them to, and you just kind of let go and say, well, this is who I am, or this is what I am, or whatever. Which is, I just said the same thing over and over again. And this is who I am.
Yes. Yeah, and when you take all of that, but it's part of your consciousness then. It's part of your experience. So it's who you are when you go into the next opportunity. And therefore, that next opportunity you'll receive completely different and from a different space, because you've already had this experience, and now you're past that letting go or that accepting or whatever needed to happen.
Well, just like the trombone story you mentioned that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Shadoe has his place in so many parts of our lives, and we're glad he plays that note, that role.
Optimistically.
Optimistically, yeah. He even invents his own words. Anyway, so we should have a Shadoe dictionary. All right, well, with that...
That's an interesting concept.
Actually, there it is. And you might find a lot of interesting words in the Big Galoot, which you can find on Amazon.com. And with that, we bring together an end. I'm so tired today. We bring an end to another...
To the beginning.
Yeah. Let's start over.
The beginning of the end. Let's try that over.
And with that, okay, goodbye, everybody. I'd like to thank our producer, Dorothy Lee Donahue, our producer, Mark Lejeune, and co-host, our guest, Shadoe Stevens, our engineer, Seth Hendricks. I am Filippo Voltaggio saying thank you all for being part of the changes we all wish to see in this beautiful world of ours. Ciao, everyone.
You have been listening to Life Changes with Filippo, with the master of change, Filippo Voltaggio. Listen live every Monday night at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the BBS Radio Network, and visit us online at lifechangeswithfilippo.com. That's Filippo, Filippo. Today's show has been made possible in part by our sponsors, Ion Ways Water Systems, Change Your Water, Change Your Life, and Love and Miracles with Dorothy Lee Donahue. To learn more about them, visit the sponsor page of our website. Once again, join us here next week as we consciously explore and embrace the only constant, life changes.